Maya Quinn dragged her worn suitcase into the grand hall of billionaire Adrian Cole's oceanfront mansion, immediately met by the butler's up-and-down glance. A cheap nanny only babysits don't dream of doing medical work. In the corner, little Iris Cole sat motionless in her wheelchair, her eyes vacant, surrounded by the weary whispers of former nannies about nerve damage that can't be fixed. Maya stayed silent, but her gaze swept over the medication patch on the back of the girl's neck and the rigid braces binding her legs. Less than an hour later, in the child's private room, Maya observed gently press the sole of Iris's foot and smiled faintly. "Your legs are still awake. Your brain just doesn't believe it." Iris blinked for the first time, her tiny hand clutching Maya's shirt, the beginning of a reversal no one in the mansion could have foreseen. The air in that mansion felt heavy, like it was holding secrets it didn't want to let go. Maya stood there, her plain gray sweater and scuffed sneakers looking out of place against the polished marble floors and crystal chandeliers. She wasn't tall, but she carried herself with a quiet steadiness, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, no makeup to hide the faint freckles across her nose. She'd been through worse than a butler's sneer, combat zones, field hospitals, nights where she had held soldiers' hands as they took their last breaths. But this was a different kind of battlefield. The kind where people cut you down with words and looks, not bullets. She tugged her suitcase closer, the wheels scraping softly, and followed the butler down the hall, her eyes catching Iris's wheelchair again, parked near a window that framed the Pacific Ocean. Before we go further, if this story's hitting you, maybe you felt that kind of judgment, that sting of being underestimated. Could you do me a favor? Grab your phone, give this video drop a comment below about what's resonating, and hit that subscribe button. It means the world to keep sharing stories like this. Stories about people who don't give up, no matter how hard the world pushes back. All right, let's keep going. The staff room was a buzz of sharp voices when Maya walked in. The medical aide, a wiry man named Carl, with a clipboard always tucked under his arm, barely looked up. Follow the medication schedule, down to the minute. Touch the protocol, and you're out the door. His tone was clipped like he was talking to a child. Next to him, the tutor, a woman named Vanessa, with perfectly manicured nails and a silk scarf, gave Maya a once-over and smirked. "What's with the outfit? Did you get lost on the way to a thrift store?" A couple of other staff members, housekeepers, another nanny, chuckled, their eyes darting to Maya's faded jeans. Vanessa leaned forward, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Seriously, what would a nanny know about neuroplasticity? Stick to bedtime stories, honey." The room laughed again, louder this time. Maya didn't flinch. She set her bag down, her movements slow and deliberate. "I'll stick to what works," she said quietly. The laughter stopped, like someone had flipped a switch. Vanessa's smile faltered, but she turned away, flipping her scarf over her shoulder. In Iris's room, Maya knelt beside the wheelchair, her hands gentle as she examined the girl's legs. The orthopedic shoes were stiff, almost cruelly so, locking Iris's feet in a way that seemed more about control than healing. Maya's fingers traced the edge of the sedative patch on Iris's neck, her eyes narrowing. Something wasn't right. She pressed lightly on the sole of Iris's foot, watching for any sign of reflex. The big toe curled just a fraction, but enough. Maya's heart picked up. She'd seen this before, soldiers with injuries labeled hopeless kids in clinics, written off by doctors who didn't look close enough. "You're still in there?" she whispered to Iris, her voice low like a promise. Iris's fingers twitched, brushing Maya's sleeve, and for a moment the room felt less cold. The next morning, Maya sat at the breakfast table, with Iris a tray of oatmeal and juice in front of them. Carl, the medical aide, hovered nearby, his eyes sharp. "Don't mess with the braces," he snapped when Maya reached to loosen one. "They're prescribed?" Maya nodded, her face calm, but her hands stayed still, waiting until he turned away. She'd seen the way Iris winced when the braces were tightened, the way her legs tensed unnaturally. Across the table, Vanessa the tutor scrolled through her phone, muttering, "Some people think they're doctors just because they read a blog." The housekeeper, a woman with a tight bun and a pinched face, chimed in. "She's probably here for a paycheck. Won't last a week." Maya spooned oatmeal for Iris, her movement steady, ignoring them. But when Vanessa leaned over and said, "You're embarrassing yourself, dressing like that in a place like this," Maya paused, looked her dead in the eye, and said, "I'm here for Iris, not a fashion show." The room went quiet, forks clinking awkwardly against plates. Later that afternoon, Maya pushed Iris's wheelchair through the mansion's garden, the gravel crunching under the wheels. The air smelled of salt and jasmine, but the beauty felt distant, overshadowed by the staff's cold glances from the terrace. A groundskeeper, a burly man named Tom, with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes, leaned on his rake and called out, "Careful, Nanny. Don't trip over your own shoes. They look like they've seen better days." A few others laughed, their voices carrying over the neatly trimmed hedges. Maya kept pushing the wheelchair, her hands steady, but she stopped when Tom added, "You think you're some kind of miracle worker? That kid's been broken for years." Maya turned, her gaze locking onto his. "Broken's not a word I use for people," she said, her voice low and even. Tom's smirk faded and he looked away, suddenly interested in his rake. Iris's hand reached back, brushing Maya's fingers, as if to say she'd heard every word. The following day, Maya found a stack of Iris's medical files left on a table in the staff lounge, pages dog-eared, and marked with dismissive notes in red ink, "No progress expected. Permanent damage." She recognized Carl's handwriting, his scrawl careless as if Iris were just a chart to close. A few staff members lingered nearby, watching her reaction. One, a young assistant with nervous eyes, whispered to another, "She's wasting her time. Everyone knows the girl's a lost cause." Maya flipped through the files, her fingers steady, but her jaw tightened when she saw a photo of Iris clipped to the back, a younger Iris laughing, her legs free of braces. She tucked the photo into her pocket, her face unreadable, and walked out, leaving the files behind. The assistant's whisper followed her, "She's delusional." But Maya's steps didn't falter, and she headed straight to Iris's room, the photo burning a hole in her pocket. That night, something shifted. Maya was reading to Iris, her voice soft over the pages of a worn picture book, when the girl's breathing changed. It got shallow fast. Her skin was clammy, her pupils tiny pinpoints. Maya's training kicked in. She'd seen this in the field: soldiers overdosed on pain meds, kids in clinics given the wrong dose. She laid Iris on her side, dimmed the lights, and pressed firmly on the girl's shoulders, grounding her. "Stay with me, Iris," she murmured, her voice steady but urgent. She ripped the sedative patch off, checking the dosage stamp way too high. She grabbed an oximeter from her bag, cursing under her breath. When the butler, a man named Harold with a permanent frown, hesitated to unlock the medical cabinet. "Move," she said, her voice like steel. He did. The oxygen tank hissed as she hooked it up, watching Iris's vitals stabilize. Footsteps echoed. Adrian Cole stood in the doorway, his face pale. "What did you just do?" he asked, his voice low. Maya didn't look up. "Saved her," she said simply. The next day, the mansion was a storm of whispers. Adrian's Aunt Lorraine, a woman with diamond earrings and a voice like a whip, cornered Maya in the hallway. "You're causing trouble," she hissed, her perfume sharp enough to sting. "Staging heroics to get close to my nephew. Pathetic." By noon, a gossip site had a headline, "Nanny breaks billionaire's medical protocol." Carl locked the medical room, his face smug. "You're done touching equipment," he said, jangling the keys. Vanessa switched Iris's lessons to a tablet, refusing Maya's requests to include motor exercises. "Stick to diapers," she snapped. Iris, tucked in her wheelchair, started to cry, her small hands twisting the blanket. Maya knelt beside her, wiping her tears with a thumb. "We're not stopping," she whispered, her voice fierce but soft. She slipped a sensory ball into Iris's hand, watching her fingers close around it. In the quiet of the evening, Maya found Iris staring out her bedroom window, her small hands gripping the armrests of her wheelchair. The ocean was a dark line against the horizon, and the room was lit only by a small lamp. Maya noticed a photo on the nightstand. Iris younger, standing with a woman who looked like her mother, both smiling on a beach. The frame was dusty, untouched for years. Maya's fingers paused over it, then pulled back. She knelt beside Iris, adjusting the blanket over her legs. "You loved the water, didn't you?" she said softly. Iris's eyes flicked to her, then back to the photo, her fingers tightening. Maya didn't push. She just sat there, letting the silence hold them both. The weight of a life interrupted, hanging in the air. Maya didn't sleep much that night. She sat at the small desk in her room, a single lamp casting shadows on the wall. Her old medical kit lay open, a reminder of the years she'd spent piecing people back together. Soldiers, kids, families who'd lost hope. She pulled out a notebook, jotting down observations, Iris's reflexes, the way her eyes tracked movement, the slight tremor in her left leg when she was tired. The sedative patch was the key. It wasn't just calming Iris, it was numbing her, keeping her locked in that chair. She flipped through the mansion's smart home app, her fingers pausing on the medication log. A few taps, and she had it. The NFC records showed patches replaced too early dosages creeping up. Her jaw tightened. Someone was doing this on purpose. She took the evidence to Adrian the next morning, standing in his office with its view of the ocean. He was a tall man, mid-40s, with tired eyes, and a suit that looked like it cost more than Maya's old car. She slid the tablet across his desk, the log open. "The patches are overdosing her," she said, her voice even. "It's not paralysis, it's suppression." Adrian's face didn't change, but his fingers gripped the tablet a little too hard. He scrolled through the data, his jaw working. "You're sure?" he asked. Maya nodded. "I've seen it before. Combat medics don't guess." He called the doctor, then the insurance rep, his voice sharp as he ordered a full review. By noon, the sedatives were stopped, and Maya had a key to the medical room. But in the hall, Lorraine's eyes followed her narrow and cold. The rehab plan started small. Maya moved Iris's standing frame to the playroom, ignoring Harold's grumble about clutter. She swapped the rigid braces for softer ones, letting Iris's legs feel the ground. But the pushback was immediate. Carl unplugged the standing frame, citing safety concerns. Vanessa called security when Maya hung a low pull-up bar, claiming it was hazardous. On the third day, Maya set up a sensory mat, playing soft music to guide Iris's steps. The music cut off mid-song, the lights dimmed, and Iris froze, her breath hitching. Maya smelled mint faint but unmistakable on the napkin Iris clutched. She checked the kitchen cameras later, her heart sinking as she watched Lorraine hand Iris that napkin, her smile too tight. In the staff dining room the next day, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Lorraine sat at the head of the table, her diamond earrings catching the light as she sipped her coffee. She didn't look at Maya directly, but her voice carried across the room. "Some people think they can play hero and get a fat paycheck," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. The other staff members glanced at Maya, their eyes darting away when she looked back. A young chef eager to please piped up. "Yeah, sticking your nose where it doesn't belong usually backfires." Maya was feeding Iris small bites of mashed potatoes, her hands steady. She didn't respond, but when Lorraine added, "This family doesn't need amateurs meddling," Maya set the spoon down her fingers, brushing Iris's hair. "This family needs Iris to walk," she said, her voice quiet but clear. Lorraine's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips, and the room went silent. Maya didn't confront her. Not yet. She swapped the napkin for a clean one, slipping a light reactive tag into the fabric. That evening when Iris started to slump, Maya flipped on the cold lights. The tag glowed faintly under Iris's chin. She called the staff into the playroom, her voice calm but firm. "This is Lorraine's special napkin," she said, holding it up. The room went still. Lorraine's face drained of color, her hands twisting her pearl necklace. Adrian stepped in his phone already to his ear, calling the family lawyer. "You're done," he said to Lorraine, his voice low but final. He turned to Maya. "Your plan runs this house now." Lorraine's heels clicked as she left her head high, but her hands shaking. The next morning, Maya found a folded note slipped under her door, the handwriting sharp and angry. "You're ruining everything. Leave." It wasn't signed, but the heavy perfume clinging to the paper pointed to Lorraine. Maya tucked it into her pocket, her face unreadable, and went to Iris's room. The girl was awake, her eyes brighter than usual, clutching a small stuffed rabbit. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, adjusting the sensory tape on Iris's calves. "Someone's feeling strong today," she said, her voice warm. Iris's fingers tightened on the rabbit, and she nodded, a tiny smile breaking through. Maya didn't mention the note, but her eyes scanned the room, lingering on the locked window, the security camera blinking in the corner. She wasn't just fighting for Iris, now she was watching her back. The media didn't let up. A blurry clip of Iris lifting her foot an inch off the ground hit the internet, and the comments were brutal. Camera trick 1 said, "Placebo nanny," another sneered. A hashtag fake nanny started trending. The wheelchair sponsor sent a legal threat accusing Maya of defaming their product. Adrian met her in the hall, his face drawn. "Can you handle this?" he asked. Maya didn't hesitate. "Give me 21 days, she said, her voice steady. No interruptions. He nodded, and for the first time, there was something like trust in his eyes. Maya went back to Iris, her hands already moving to the sensory mat, her voice low and focused. One evening, as Maya was helping Iris practice standing, a delivery man arrived at the mansion. His cap pulled low. He handed Maya a package labeled urgent medical supplies. But when she opened it, it was just a stack of old magazines, each with a sticky note, "Know your place." The delivery slip had no sender, but the handwriting matched the note from before. Maya's jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. She carried the box to the trash, her steps deliberate, and went back to Iris, who was gripping the standing frame, her knuckles white. "Keep going, kiddo," Maya said, her voice steady. She didn't tell Iris about the package, but she moved the standing frame closer to the window, where the light was brighter, and hummed a soft tune to keep Iris focused. Every morning Maya woke Iris at dawn. She brushed her skin with a soft cloth, waking up the nerves. She pressed on her shoulders, rocked her gently to stimulate her balance. A metronome ticked at 72 beats per minute, guiding Iris's movements. Maya taped her calves with neuromuscular tape, swapped the heavy braces for thin-soled shoes that let Iris feel the ground. "Look at me," Maya said, each time her voice a quiet anchor. "Step. Touch. Press." Iris's legs shook, but she didn't fall. On day 10, she stood for 30 seconds, her hands gripping Maya's. On day 15, she took a wobbly step, her eyes wide with fear and something else, hope. Maya kept her voice steady, but her hands trembled as she steadied Iris. During a quiet afternoon, Maya noticed Harold the butler lingering in the doorway of the playroom, his usual frown softer than usual. He held a tray of juice and cookies, setting it down without a word. Maya glanced at him expecting a jab, but he just nodded toward Iris, who was tracing shapes on the sensory mat with her foot. "She looks different," he said, his voice gruff. Maya didn't smile, just kept her eyes on Iris. "She's always been strong," she said. Harold shifted his polished shoes, scuffing the floor, and walked away. Later, Maya found a small key on the tray access to the equipment storage. No note, no explanation, just a quiet shift in the air like the mansion itself was starting to root for them. The staff started to change. Harold stopped sneering and started lingering, watching Iris's progress with a frown that wasn't quite a frown anymore. Vanessa's lessons got quieter, her tablet set aside, as she watched Iris shuffle across the mat. Even Carl the aide started unlocking the medical room without being asked. But the outside world kept pushing. The media called Maya a lucky nanny, said Iris's progress was a fluke. Lorraine's friends spread rumors whispering about opportunists and staged miracles. Maya ignored it all, her focus on Iris's tiny steps, the way her fingers curled when she laughed. One afternoon, as Maya adjusted Iris's sensory shoes, a sleek black car pulled up outside the mansion, its engine purring softly. The driver, a man in a tailored suit with a cold smile, stepped out and handed Maya an envelope marked "Confidential." Inside was a single sheet, a letter from a rival medical firm offering her a job to leave the Cole estate immediately. The salary was triple what she made now. The driver leaned in, his voice low. "Smart people know when to walk away," he said, glancing at Iris. Maya folded the letter, her hands steady, and handed it back. "I'm not here for smart," she said, her eyes locked on his. "I'm here for her." The driver's smile faded, and he drove off without another word. Maya turned back to Iris, her voice soft. "Let's try another step." One night, Maya overheard a phone call in the hallway. Vanessa, her voice low and sharp, talking to someone outside the mansion. "She's got Adrian wrapped around her finger," she hissed. "If she keeps this up, we're all replaceable." Maya stood just out of sight, her back against the wall, her breathing slow. She didn't move, didn't make a sound, but her hand tightened around the small notebook in her pocket where she'd been tracking Iris's progress. The next morning, Vanessa's tablet was glitching, her lessons canceled for the day. Maya didn't say a word, just set up a new game for Iris, using a softball to roll across the mat, her voice steady as she guided the girl's movements. On day 21, the mansion was quiet, the morning light soft through the windows. Maya knelt in front of Iris, her hands steady on the girl's shoulders. "You've got this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Iris looked at her eyes bright, and took a step. Then another. The room seemed to hold its breath. Iris's legs wobbled, tears streaming down her face, but she kept going 3 steps forward. Adrian burst through the door, his face crumpling as he dropped to his knees, catching Iris in his arms. The staff stood frozen, some crying, some covering their mouths. Maya stepped back. Her hands clasped her face, calm, but her eyes shining. That afternoon, a small crowd gathered in the playroom. Staff, a few family friends, even the groundskeeper, Tom, who stood awkwardly in the back. Iris stood again this time, holding a single crutch, her steps slow but sure. The room was silent, every eye on her. Maya stood to the side, her arms crossed her face, unreadable. When Iris reached the end of the mat, she turned, her small face breaking into a grin. The crowd clapped, a few cheers breaking through. Tom looked down, his hands stuffed in his pockets, and muttered, "Didn't think she had it in her." Maya caught his eye, her gaze steady. She always did, she said, and turned back to Iris, adjusting the crutch with a gentle hand. The next week, a local journalist slipped into the mansion under the guise of a delivery worker, snapping photos of Iris's therapy session through a window. By evening, a blog post was circulating, "Nanny exploits child for fame." The article twisted Maya's every move, calling her exercises reckless and her presence intrusive. Staff whispered in the halls, their eyes darting to Maya as she carried Iris's sensory mat to the playroom. A housekeeper muttered, "She's bringing too much attention to this house." Maya didn't respond, but her hands paused on the mat, her fingers tightening briefly. She set it down, smoothing it out with care, and turned to Iris. "Let's make today count," she said, her voice steady, ignoring the weight of the stairs. That afternoon, Adrian stood in front of a small press conference, his voice steady but thick. "Thanks to Maya Quinn, my daughter can walk," he said. "She's now director of the Cole Children's Rehabilitation Center." Cameras flashed, but Maya wasn't there. She was in the playroom helping Iris balance on a low beam, her voice soft. "One more step, kiddo." When a reporter cornered her later, asking for an interview, she shook her head. "Give me 90 more days," she said. "I want her to run." The fallout came fast. Lorraine's name hit the tabloids, her special napkins exposed, as laced with a mild sedative, enough to keep Iris weak. She lost her board seat at the family foundation, her social circle shrinking overnight. Carl was let go his resume, quietly blacklisted after Adrian's team found discrepancies in his credentials. Vanessa's tutoring contract wasn't renewed. Her Instagram, once full of smug posts, went silent. The wheelchair sponsor pulled their lawsuit, issuing a public apology after Adrian's lawyers sent a single email. None of it was loud or dramatic, just the quiet weight of truth settling in. In the days that followed, Maya found a small drawing tucked into her medical kit, Iris's work, a crayon sketch of two figures holding hands, one in a wheelchair, one standing. The colors were messy, the lines uneven, but Maya's fingers lingered on it, her lips pressing together. She slipped it into her notebook next to her notes on Iris's progress. Later, she caught Harold watching her from the hallway, his usual stiff posture gone. "She drew that for you," he said, almost too quiet to hear. Maya nodded, her eyes on the floor. "I know," she said, and walked away, her steps light but sure. Maya didn't stop. She showed up every morning, her sneakers scuffed, but her hands steady, guiding Iris through new exercises. The mansion felt different now, lighter, like it could breathe. Iris started laughing more, her voice echoing down the halls. One evening, Maya was packing up her kit when Adrian walked in, his suit jacket off, his tie loosened. He didn't say much, just stood there watching Iris stack blocks on the floor. "You're not what I expected," he said. Finally, his voice low. Maya zipped her bag, her movements precise. "Good," she said, and walked out, her steps quiet but sure. One morning, as Maya set up a new balance board for Iris, she noticed a small crowd of staff gathered outside the playroom window, watching silently. Among them was the young chef who'd mocked her weeks earlier, his apron twisted in his hands. He caught her eye and looked away, his face flushed. Later, he approached her in the kitchen, holding out a small plate of homemade cookies shaped like stars. "For Iris," he mumbled, avoiding her gaze. Maya took the plate, her expression soft but unreadable. "She'll like these," she said, and carried them to the playroom, where Iris's face lit up at the sight. The chef lingered in the doorway, watching as Iris giggled, crumbs on her chin. And for the first time, he didn't say a word. Weeks later, Maya stood in the garden watching Iris chase a butterfly, her steps uneven but strong. The ocean hummed in the distance, the air warm with salt and sunlight. She didn't smile, but her eyes were soft, her hands loose at her sides. The staff had stopped whispering, stopped staring. They nodded when she passed, their voices quieter now, respectful. Adrian joined her, his shadow falling across the grass. He didn't speak, but his presence said enough. Maya wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't a nanny or a medic or a stranger. She was the one who'd changed everything. This story isn't just about Iris walking. It's about the times you've been judged, overlooked, told you didn't belong. It's about standing tall anyway, doing the work, carrying the weight. You know that feeling, the sting of being dismissed, the quiet strength it takes to keep going. You weren't wrong to hold on. You weren't alone in that fight. And the truth, it always finds a way to rise. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and hit follow to walk with me through heartbreak, betrayal, and finally healing.